It was the first time she dressed this sexy since the divorce. Sure enough, her ex-husband couldn't take his eyes off her. After 7 years of marriage, her husband complained she wasn't as pretty as she used to be. What he failed to see was how perfectly she kept the household running. After the split, he moved on to someone young and pretty. Meanwhile, the weight of raising 2 kids fell entirely on her shoulders as a single mom. She even had to bring her 2 boys to work with her. One day, the kids were goofing around and a toy flew straight into her boss's head. On top of that, she had a habit of showing up late. Unfortunately, she got fired. After losing her job, she couldn't hold it together anymore. Life felt like it had no direction. Luckily, fate had a soft spot for this struggling single mom. While catching a ride, she crossed paths with a billionaire. That day, he flew her to her kids' school. He accidentally picked up her journal. He couldn't help but flip it open. Inside were little everyday notes about nothing special. When her son needed to practice guitar, a reminder to pick up a blanket tomorrow. He smiled. His world was full of young, beautiful women, but he never met anyone this genuine and refreshing. The last page read, after the divorce, all that's left is an endless loneliness. That hit close to home and brought back memories of his own childhood. Turns out, he was also raised by a single mother. He called the number written inside. With the address in hand, he found her by the ocean. He was about to walk over and return it, but he heard her on the phone with her sister in tears. Her ex was getting remarried, but her son was still hoping his parents would get back together. She couldn't bring herself to tell her kids. He stood back and listened for a while. It moved him deeply. He waited until she hung up before slowly walking over. He handed her a handkerchief. She was surprised to see him, but before she could think twice, the tears just kept coming. He'd helped her out more than once. She developed a soft spot for the stranger. They sat by the water and talked. She opened up about everything she'd been through. He offered words of encouragement. Something still felt missing between them, like the connection needed one more push. Late that night, he drove her home. They said their goodbyes downstairs. He watched her head upstairs, wanting to say something more, but the words never came. It left him a little disappointed. Not long after, a friend helped her land a new job. What she didn't know was that the company's owner was the very billionaire who had feelings for her. The job was straightforward. She'd be assisting a female manager. Basically, just fetching coffee and running errands. She promised her boys she'd take a day off to spend with them. So she asked her manager for the day off. Her manager was actually quite attractive, but little did she know, she'd eventually lose out to this single mom in matters of the heart. Early that morning, she got the boys ready and headed out. Her younger son said it would be great if dad could come too. She didn't know what to say, so she brushed it off with a few vague words. The scenery along the way was stunning. Everything was blanketed in a soft white snow. She stepped out of the car, unaware that the man who was meant for her had shown up right behind her. He'd brought his niece along. They had just walked into the hotel. Her 2 boys, caught up in their fun, accidentally knocked the little girl over. He rushed over to check on her. At the same moment, she realized her boys had caused trouble. She hurried over. He recognized her instantly. The surprise in his eyes carried a hint of something like hope. When she got a clear look at his face, her jaw dropped. What a coincidence. They greeted each other warmly. She introduced her 2 boys and complimented his niece, calling her an adorable little beauty. The chance meeting turned the kids into fast friends who hit it off right away. When she found out the boys played guitar, they discovered a shared interest. The little girl heard they were twins, but she was puzzled by how different they looked. And just like that, the whole group came together. They had a snowball fight in the woods. When they wore themselves out, they grabbed a bite to eat. Then finished the day off with a horseback ride through the snow. That night, when it was time to head back to their rooms, the kids hugged each other like they didn't want the day to end. Back in the room, she finally told her boys the news she'd been holding back. When they heard their dad was marrying someone else, they couldn't accept it. One of them said if dad left mom, it must be mom's fault. The adult world is complicated. How could a child possibly understand? But those words cut her deep. She sat alone on the lobby sofa crying. The billionaire happened to walk by and saw her. When she noticed him, she said with a helpless laugh, "Every time we run into each other, I'm either crying or having the worst day." He could tell she was going through it again. So he naturally took a seat beside her. She told him what happened. "My ex is marrying someone else, and my son thinks it's because I wasn't good enough. I gave everything I had to that marriage, but somehow it all fell apart anyway. I can handle my ex moving on, but when my own child blamed me, it broke my heart." The more she talked, the more emotional she got. He sat there, not quite sure what to do. He took a sip of water, then pulled her into his arms. Everything she'd been through resonated with him on a personal level. He then said some things that he hoped would lift her up. Every word landed exactly where it needed to. His gentleness, his warmth, and the steady sincerity in his eyes. In that moment, she was completely swept away. And before she knew it, the single mom leaned in and kissed him. When she came to her senses, she realized she'd been way too forward. She kept apologizing over and over. He didn't quite know how to respond either. Too embarrassed to stay, she made up an excuse and slipped away. What she didn't know was that her impulsive moment had completely captivated him. This billionaire had never lacked for accomplished, beautiful women chasing after him, yet somehow he'd fallen for this single mom at first sight. And that little moment gave her first real taste of something that felt like love. But the sweetness didn't last long before things took a turn. Early the next morning, she discovered one of her sons was gone. She searched every corner of the hotel. She even asked the security guard at the entrance. Nobody had seen him. It was 30 below zero outside, dangerously cold. With no other options, she ran to find the billionaire. After she explained what happened, he immediately called in a professional search team. Everyone fanned out to search. But after a long while, there was still no sign of him. Things were looking worse by the minute. She was beside herself, crying nonstop. He pulled her close and told her to stop letting her mind go to the worst places. Just when she was about to lose hope, news came in. The search team had found him. Turns out he'd been trying to call his dad and accidentally got locked inside a storage room at the hotel. Once she knew her son was safe, the weight finally lifted off her chest. But on the way back, the motorcycle broke down out of nowhere. She felt terrible about it. Ever since you met me, I've been nothing but trouble. She'd barely finished apologizing when he broke into a smile. All these times we keep running into each other. And then that kiss last night. Don't you think that's fate? That made her blush. He gazed at her with soft, tender eyes. The moment felt absolutely perfect. Just as things were about to go further, the sound of a motorcycle broke through. The rescue team had come to pick them up. Couldn't have had worse timing. Back at the hotel, the first thing she did was wrap her son in a hug. The little boy knew he'd messed up. He felt bad for wandering off and scaring her like that. With a little romance in her life, she started putting more care into how she looked. The moment the trip was over, she spilled everything to her sister. Seeing that glow on her sister's face, her sister grabbed the phone right away. If you've already caught feelings, why haven't you asked him out yet? She couldn't argue with that. She finally worked up the nerve to call him. But she used the excuse that the school was hosting a party and invited his niece to come. His niece said yes without a second thought, but since she hadn't actually invited him, he couldn't help feeling a little left out. He tested the waters and asked, "What about me?" She hesitated, then said shyly, "Well, if you're free, you're welcome to come too." That finally put a smile on his face. Everything went perfectly. It was probably the happiest day she'd had since the divorce. She felt like a girl waiting for her first boyfriend to show up. But that evening, her ex showed up out of nowhere to see the boys. The kids hadn't seen their dad in a while. They talked for a long time that night. One of the boys told him mom was like an angel who fell from the sky. She literally came down in a helicopter. And some guy taught me how to ride a horse. When he found out she'd gone on a trip without telling him, and that there was a strange man along for the ride, he had the nerve to accuse her of being a bad influence on their kids. Who knows what was going through his head? Probably just jealous that she was doing better without him. The pointless argument only ended when the boys walked in. Soon the kids' party got underway. The two of them sat nearby and talked for a while. She learned more about his past. Turns out his parents had divorced when he was young too. So he understood firsthand how hard it was for a single mom. And he knew what it felt like to grow up missing that sense of a complete family. Then came the highlight of the party. The host invited the parents to join in. Neither of them saw that coming. But the kids were too excited to say no to. So they went along and joined the crowd. It was a simple train game. They stood in a line with their arms crossed. The kids weaved through the middle. In that joyful, laughter-filled night, all their worries just melted away. No more stressing over the little things. But of course, nothing ever goes perfectly. Her ex had shown up to surprise the boys. Instead, he walked into a scene that made his blood boil. The moment the game ended, she spotted the uninvited guest. And he'd brought his girlfriend along. While he was saying hi to the boys, the billionaire quickly figured out who he was. But instead of stepping back, he walked straight over to her side. She politely made the introductions. But she never used the word ex-husband. She just called him the kid's dad. Nobody knows where he got the nerve. But he took a jab at the billionaire. "Heard you're kind of a big deal." The billionaire stayed completely calm and didn't bother engaging. If it weren't for her, this guy wouldn't even be in the same room as him. She was ready to leave early. But her ex wouldn't let it go. "I heard you went on a trip with my ex-wife." He was clearly trying to start something, but the billionaire wasn't going to stoop to his level. He was too classy for that. On the way out, the billionaire made a point of getting close to her. Her ex visibly fumed. What started as a fun night ended on a sour note. Back home, she wanted to explain everything that had happened. But she didn't know where to start. Then her phone rang. She picked up right away. She apologized for her ex's rude behavior. But he brushed it off like it was nothing. Instead, he turned the focus to her. He told her not to let tonight get to her. And if anything ever goes wrong again, don't just hide and cry about it. Call me. Every word he said touched her heart. And the way he carried himself made her feel a kind of happiness she'd never known before. If this was a dream, she hoped she'd never have to wake up.